Greetings and welcome to another edition of The Pedal Shift Project. The Pedal Shift Project is a series of conversations, thoughts, and experiments around the bike touring lifestyle. From tips and tricks to ideas on how to ride your ride, let's shrink the world by bike. Show notes and more are available at pedalshift.net/305, and you can email the show at pedalshift@pedalshift.net or text me at 202-930-1109 and check Pedalshift out on all the socials as well. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the 305th edition of the Pedal Shift Project. My name's Tim Mooney. Thanks so much for joining. On this edition, we are going to be giving you part one of day 6 of the Empire State Trail. But before we get there, I want to give a quick sidebar before we get started on this first part. For those of you who listened to last week's Best Of regarding the Eastern Express, as I suggested at the end of it, Frank's website is indeed retired. So all of the old cue sheets that we talked about in this particular episode, they're only out there if you downloaded them back in the day. Some of us might hypothetically have them, but here's why they may not necessarily be all that great of an idea. His route has been subsumed into the Adventure Cycling Association's existing routes. The Eastern Express connector is not the entirety of the route that he ended up developing. And it was because of the detective work of a friend of the show, Preston Page Piper, the Triple P man. He checked in with the Adventure Cycling Association itself. And here is what he heard back. They said, and I quote, "In order to ride Frank Moritz's original entire Eastern Express route, you'll have to use a combination of our TransAmerica Trail, Eastern Express connector, and Chicago to New York City routes. The combo of these three routes follow Frank's original route with, and this is the important part, a few deviations that we decided to make when we took over the route." And I think that last point is the really important part. And first of all, again, major props to ACA for doing this, because this was and continues to be a fantastic idea that it became, frankly, I think a better way to do the Trans Am. The deviations are likely for the better because, as Frank mentioned in our conversation, the route was a public beta when he released it, and he got a ton of help from locals and other folks who went out there and said, "I will cycle a public beta for you and tell you where there are issues." And there were some issues. In fact, there was one section, I believe, near Steubenville that ended up getting completely scrapped. And I believe that some other portions of it were changed in small ways and in larger ways. But what ACA does is, now that it's in their system, they make deviations as conditions warrant. They're the ones that are continuing to make sure that this is a good, safe route. And they ended up merging this route into their larger Chicago to New York route, or was it New York to Chicago? I can't remember which direction they say it is, but it's Chicago to New York. And the combination of those three things really end up making this a much better setup than I think even Frank would admit it was back in the day. So props to Frank for coming up with it. Props to the ACA for integrating it into their systems and updating this ride. It is fantastic. Check it out. If you're thinking about the Trans Am, give it a look, because I think that this Eastern Express connector is, I think, a superior route, just for me eyeballing it. And I've also done a chunk of it, at least here on the East Coast. So as I've threatened many a time, if I am going to do a cross-country route in segments, I've already done a good chunk of it. And I'm certainly looking at the western parts of the Eastern Express route for continuation. So more to come on that. All right, so let's talk about day 6. Day 6 finally brought some dry, sunny weather for me. And as you all heard, days 4 and 5 were wet, and they were rough. Some new to me portions of the trail also came to me in day 6. In part 1, we say farewell to Fort Plain's Proud Peacock and try to avoid getting lost in Kanajahari on the way to Troy. Also, a quick audio update for day 6. My phone was still recovering from the dousing that it got on days 4 and 5. So audio quality takes a hit late in this particular episode, which is part 1. And at the beginning of next week's part 2, you get some howly winds, you get some lower quality sound. But the segments are totally listenable, and they are just not up to snuff to my usual standards. And I like to throw myself on the sword when that happens, as you all know. All right. Day 6, part 1. Hope you enjoy.
Good morning from the tent. It's before 7 a.m. and I had a really good night's sleep, but that has nothing to do with the ambient noise around here. The one thing I forgot is how noisy of a campground this is, and that is inescapable. I believe you may be able to hear I-90 behind me, the New York State Thruway. I think that's what it is, but it's very close by and it's an all-night kind of road, so I assume it's an interstate. The other thing is there's a very busy train line and a very noisy train line that runs throughout the night. The loudest train line I've ever been near. So it's freight, it's everything. Thankfully, I have a set of very good earplugs that I have as part of my sleep system. There's no way you could sleep through the night here without a really good, they need to block out substantially everything. The difference in decibels when I took them out, because there was a train going by just now, right before I started recording, and I took them out in preparation for that, and it was just like, wow, what a difference. But I slept like a rock, which, to be honest, right before I went to sleep, I was just not feeling it. My event bag failed a little bit over the last couple of days, so my sleep clothes were soaked. I mean, just really wet. Now, the t-shirt was cotton, so that happens. It probably took the bulk of it. And my sleeping bag, a down sleeping bag, was a little bit moist. It does not appear that the down got wet, but it does feel like it's a little less lofty. So I was a little concerned because it got down into the low 50s last night. I was a little concerned that the bag would not be keeping me as warm, but I was very warm. I was fine last night. But just that, kind of you've been wet all day, and even though you put on dry clothes, just everything feels a little clammy. It just was not a great psychological night for me as I was going to sleep. Not what I was expecting. I was really expecting, once I got the wet clothes off me that I ate, that I would feel much better. But I got dark so fast and all of that. So it just was like kind of, But waking up this morning after a really good night's sleep, I feel a lot better. So that's good. Today should be dry, which is what I thought it was going to be yesterday. The downside is that I'm getting a picture of what tomorrow is going to be like in the next couple of days. I've always been saying that the route gets really interesting for the last couple of days because I have no specific place to sleep. It's wild camping as the primary plan, but Thursday it appears that it's going to be raining most of the day, which is different. That's a shift in the forecast. So what that means is I can try to wait it out at the hotel a little bit, and not get as far. Which is certainly it's always a possibility. I could wait it out until I could check out, which is 11, but it's still going to be raining then. Or I can strap on the rain gear and just go for it. And then once that rain is done, some front will have gone through. It must be a cold front, because behind that is easily the coldest air of this entire trip. And we're talking nights in the 40s, and it's a thing. So I have to make sure that everything is really, really dry and can stay dry through any kind of riding that I'd be doing tomorrow. But that's a tonight thing to deal with. I'm going to look at the event bag, but I think that I don't trust it at the moment, nor do I trust any kind of repair that I would do enough to have even the possibility that my stuff inside it would get wet again. Everything else worked great. Everything else was dry. So I think what I might do is I may shift around some things. I may ball up the stealth camping fly, and maybe even the main rain fly of this tent. And that takes out quite a bit of bulk, and then get my sleep system and the tent itself into my larger orange dry bag, which is very thick and very, 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 very well constructed. So making sure the things that have to stay dry go in there. The things, it's nice if they stay dry. My rain flies will go in the event bag up front. I think that's what I'm going to do. And if that's the case and everything is bone dry to start, having some moist flies does not bother me at the end of the day. But what really matters, of course, is being able to stay warm. The other thing that I realized is, actually, I knew this, and I just have not done anything about it because I haven't needed to, is I don't have a warm hat for, like a winter hat kind of a thing, which would be a really important thing for the 2 stealth camping nights. So I may be in the market for such a thing. So I'll be looking for that. Unfortunately, I was just in Western New York and Central New York and could have picked up a Syracuse hat in Central New York or a Buffalo Bills hat in Western New York. And now I'm about to be entering the capital region, which has, shall we say, mixed affiliations at best. So I may not be able to get a proper team hat, or maybe I can just get a basic hat. I just need something to keep my head warm. So these are the things I'm thinking about as I'm waking up. The other thing that I looked up in the more near term is this morning and taking a look at the ride ahead. It's about the same as yesterday. Yesterday did not end up being as short as I thought it was. It ended up being closer to 65, I think. That's about what I've got today. I've got 66 today before I get into Troy. There are mile shaving opportunities if I really wanted to, but I don't think so. I'm getting up early, and I'd like to do the big loop up above and around Albany along the Mohawk River. I think that would be something that I would like. I think it'll be more picturesque and interesting. The one thing I will mention about that, though, is that if we're on, it does look like we're on mostly paved, according to the data that I've got on Ride with GPS, which is a big help. The one thing I noticed yesterday on the traditional trail, it's a really remarkable how much difference energy output. I thought I was going slightly uphill, and as it turned out, I was actually going slightly downhill if the data is to be believed. So, that's just how much difference you've got in terms of your energy output for your cycling when you're in stuff like that. So surface was perfectly fine. There was nothing wrong with it. It wasn't rutted or super muddy or whatever, but you have no momentum compared to rolling on paved surfaces, which of course is all file under duh, but it was just a really interesting contrast, especially given all of the moist weather. I have quite the bag of laundry to do tonight. So that's another thing that I will be, that's another task that I'll have. But other than that, I'm looking forward to kind of getting up. Like I said, it's a little bit before 7. There's a coffee shop in town called The Bake Shop, which is wide open, and I'm going to definitely strive to hit that. I think rather than dawdle around here too much, figure I may as well try to get there, at a reasonable hour, and then really just start rolling as early as possible, just to get checked in, get the laundry started, and get a good dinner. And I've got that TV show I'd like to watch tonight, and it's probably an hour and a half long because it's 3 episodes. So that is my day. I am really looking forward to this portion of the ride. It was probably the one I was most looking forward to. So I'm hopeful that the rain holds off. It does look like it's going to be tonight when it starts, so I may not have to worry about the surprise showers that I got yesterday. So we're gonna go with that and hope for the best. It's going to be warm, especially towards the end of the day, perhaps flirting with 80. But it does look like it's going to be cloudy most of the day. Then again, this is sort of what I thought yesterday was going to be like, so grain of salt. My weather forecasting app has not been the champ of this trip, and yesterday was when I got hammered for that the most. All right, The birds are starting to wake up. I should wake up. Start getting packed up. More to come.
We are rolling out of Fort Plain, New York. I stopped not at the coffee shop, but at a grocery store because I was thinking a little bit ahead. Bicycle touring sometimes is a bit of a chess game, isn't it? You know, you're kind of thinking ahead. And I think often I find myself talking about not what's going on in the moment on these journals, but what I'm thinking ahead to. I have often preached the gospel, if you will, of having preparation, being ready for just about anything. And one thing that I did not have on me was a meal I could make easily in camp without anything other than maybe some water. So just as my kind of emergency thing, because it's light and easy and quick and would be a hot meal on what could be a cold night, I grabbed one of the instant potato options that was available at the Save-A-Lot and added that to my basket, and that is now safely ensconced in my pannier. So I'll have that. I think the odds of me bringing that back with me on the train, very high, very high. However, I think that there is some peace of mind when you've got something like that, and you just know, hey, yeah, I'll probably have some the same bagels that I've been carrying since in Newark in my pannier there. I promise I will eat those today. Maybe. I'll try. I'll have to be very hungry. But in any event, just knowing that it's there, I think just gives me some extra flexibility in case at the end of the day I'm just not finding any dinner options. Now, of course, those days, we'll talk more about them in the actual days because that's going to be all about finding a camp and preparing for all of that. So we'll leave that for another time. The sun is out, and although I am normally I like clouds kind of guy, and I think I will get them later, it does feel good to have that on me at the moment. Because today is going to start cool and go warm, I've decided to go somewhere in the middle here. I'm wearing my quick dry pants, which miraculously, but not unexpectedly, dried overnight. I'm also wearing a short sleeve wool shirt, merino wool shirt, which stayed dry in my panniers, and sun sleeves, just to keep the sun off of me. And at some point I may do the kind of cowboy bandana around my neck thing just to keep the sun off of my neck if the sun stays out. I don't expect that based on the weather forecast, because we do have some weather coming in late tonight, thankfully. So keeping an eye on all of that, and starting slow. I've got plenty of time today, but of course on the side of things where you've got a hotel room and a Star Wars show to watch, I would very much like to get there on the earlier side. Let's see, going through an intersection here. We're getting close to the town of Kanajahari. Again, my pronunciations may or may not be right in this part of the state. Historically, that has been a difficult maneuvering kind of a thing. There's a weird turn of some types. And old friend of the show, Ethan Georgie, used to, or had a great story on all that, which has been shared on the podcast a few times, about how he got lost and put on some serious miles before he realized it. I nearly got lost, but there were some signs from a past tour. There were pink arrows of some type. I don't know if that will still be the case, because things have been so well signed with the new Empire State Trail map signage. Maybe better, so we'll see. One last thing, I did not find the potable water. There was a hose, but it looked industrial at the campsite. So I eschewed that and did what many people would think would be kind of ridiculous, but I'm sort of like, for $1, I know the water is good. I bought a gallon of water at the grocery store and filled up my water tank and all of my bottles. I also got an extra Gatorade. So I have all the liquids I need. Yesterday I did not have as much water as I have in previous days. I was actually pretty proud of myself at how hydrated I was going into the hotel the other night. I think that helped me through the 70 miles. And I woke up with, no muscle fatigue at all. This morning I woke up with the quads were a little bit tight. And I do think that being fully hydrated really kind of helps your muscle recovery as well. So I'm going to try to do much better this morning and this afternoon to make sure that I'm drinking a lot. Drink before you're thirsty, kids. That's what somebody says. Somebody says that. Apparently I do too. Oh, I forgot to say one more thing. My friend the peacock came back this morning. So apparently the peacock just likes to come and check out the campers. Does belong across the street. Guy last night was like, he won't hurt you. And I was like, oh yeah, no, I'm just sort of stunned to see a peacock in Fort Plain, New York. And so yeah, apparently he just comes out. And so this morning when I was just about ready to finish up, I got one more visit from my friend the peacock. So I got up and got a few closer photos. So hopefully those will end up someplace where you all can see them, because that was kind of one of the more delightful surprises I've ever had in any campsite, to have a bird of that beauty being there. Now, I don't know a thing about peacocks in captivity, so I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, but this one was particularly beautiful. All right, thought I would give you the update because it was a peacock update. Aha, Kanajahari. You almost got me. So there is a great sign going from New York to Buffalo, but not so much. Well, let's see here. Nope, it's just confusing because I went through the parking lot and wasn't paying attention that there was the trail. There are blue lines and there is a sign. So this is a cell phone. This was on me. Kanajahari, you win. You are well signed again. I believe I see the road that used to not have a sign. Still doesn't have a sign, but now there's a very prominent trail, paved and very obvious, that is actually even has stanchions up. Canalway Trail, Montgomery County, 11 mile marker 11.5. So yeah, you would not go up that road by mistake. Whereas before, this Y, it was kind of like you just didn't know which way was the right way. And now you do. Now it is much better because there's a trail and it's well marked. That is fantastic. Empire State Trail, an evolution in greatness. Yeah, put that on the website. Getting close to about 10 miles in to a 66 mile day, so still pretty early, still very cool out, very nice. And I'm in the shadow of the mountain that this trail butts up against. One criticism I have of this Montgomery County portion is, just part of the fact that it's a multi-use trail. And I'm guessing here, but it feels like I'm going over a rumble strip constantly, and it's hard to get to a comfortable speed because of it. And there are some parts that are worse than others. And I thought to myself, is this frost heaving? And, I was like, oh, geez Louise. I just crossed over this wood bridge that needs some replacement. Is it frost heaving? And I thought, well, why wasn't the case yesterday in the beautiful lead up to Fort Plain? Well, and I thought, maybe this is older and the other one is newer. And that may be the case. But what I think it is that this is also used for snowmobiles in the winter. And if you know a snowmobile, or a snow machine, depending on where you're from, we always call them snowmobiles around here, it's kind of like a Jeep track underneath it, and that's how it gets its power. Well, I'm wondering if in the very early or very late parts of the season, those ruts are being caused by the snowmobiles, which again would be part of, they run, let's see, I just passed the sign, December 15th to March 20th. Yeah, I mean, these days, it used to be that was a very reliable, there'll be snow on the ground in this part of the state. Now I'm less sure of that, especially on the early side of things. So, yeah, I just wonder if that's causing that. Is the trail bad? No, not at all. It's great. It's probably better paved than not paved. But I do wonder if the snowmobile use is causing it. That is a theory. I could be completely wrong. It's just too consistent over certain periods of time. And it's better in some places than others. So, of course, maybe in some parts where the snow melts quicker and it's bare pavement with the snowmobiles on it directly. I don't know. This is all part of the rank speculation portion of this edition of the Tour Journal. So, am I making good time? Not as good as yesterday. I think I'm probably in the 10 mile per hour range rather than the 12. That may improve later. I just had a little more food and a little more liquid. So we'll get it up. I think I may grab something more caffeinated later just to see if we can boost some performance later on here. I think we're going to be going on a non-paved trail relatively soon. So we'll see what those conditions are like. But just beautiful, beautiful weather. Since I'm in the shade. If I'm out in the sun, I may change my tune slightly. But overall, compared to the last 2 days, very little to complain about. Okay, more to come. About 15 miles in Fultonville, New York. The forecast in the app suggested it was going to be mostly cloudy today. I am not seeing that. Maybe later. But for the moment, I think that this is going to be a sun-soaked ride, which will be fine. A nice contrast from yesterday, as I said before. And the trail has improved somewhat here. I believe we are going to be leaving Montgomery County relatively soon. It's been very quiet. I'm seeing my first cyclist right now. But this is a very rural part of the trail. Hi there. Absent the towns, of course. But the distance between the towns, there's at least a solid 10 miles between towns there. Just taking a quick peek here. I'm stopping at the sign just to get a sense here. So Fultonville. Next up, we've got Fort Hunter. We're passing Lock 11. Amsterdam, where I stopped for lunch last time, is on the other side of the river. My recollection is there's not a lot of services after that until basically Schenectady. So I don't know what I'm going to do. I've got plenty of food on me, so I may just kind of keep pushing and look to get some lunch and take up more of a break in Schenectady, and then that'll be more than halfway there. So just depending on the energy level that I've got. It's been a little slow going this morning, but it's so far it's not the end of the world, and I'm looking forward to getting past Schenectady, and then there it's a really beautiful, I think that the trail hugs the river, the Mohawk River, through Cohoes, and then that's all well north of Albany. So this is going to be, after Schenectady, it's going to be all brand new to me, because last time I got off the trail and took New York Route 5, basically all the way to where my my flat was, and then a mile later where my rental car was. So yeah, we're getting reasonably close to the end of trail that I have at least traced before. Whether it's the same trail or not, we know that there's been some places where they've changed it. But this all feels the same to me at this point. So yeah, new to me stuff starts today, which is kind of fun and exciting. All right, off we go.
And with that is the end of part 1 of day 6. Join us next week for Pedal Shift 306, where we will close out day 6 with you Guest Tip Part 2. And of course, we'll have statistics and all sorts of good stuff then. And as always, we like to close out the show with a special shout out to the Pedal Shift Society. Because of support from listeners like you, Pedal Shift is a weekly bicycle touring podcast with a global community, expanding into live shows and covering new tours. If you like what you hear, you can support the show for $5, $2, or even $1 a month. And there's one-shot and annual options if you're not into the small monthly thing. Check it all out at pedalshift.net/society. On to the society. Kimberly Wilson, Caleb Jenkinson, Cameron Lean, Andrew McGregor, Michael Hart, Keith Nagel, Brock Dittus, Thomas Skadow, Marco Lowe, Terrence Manson, Harry Telgadas, Chris Barron, Mark Van Ram, Brad Hipwell, Mr. T, Nathan Poulton, Stephen Dickerson, Vince LaGreco, Cody Florchinger, Tom Beninati, Greg Braithwaite, Sandy Pizzio, Jeff Muster, Seth Pollock, Joseph Quinn, Drew Porter, Byron Patterson, Joachim Robber, Ray Jackson, Jeff Fry, Kenny Mikey, Lisa Hart, John Denkler, Steve Henkel, Miguel Quinones, Alejandro Abiles Reyes, Keith Spangler, Greg Towner, Jody Zeranin, Lucas Barwick, Michael Baker, Brian Bechtal, Reinhard Biggle, Greg Middlemiss, Connie Moore, William Gothman, Brian Benton, Joan Churchill, Mike Bender, Rick Weinberg, Billy Crafton, Gary Matushak, Greg Latois Lopez, James Sloan, Jonathan Dillard, John Funk, Ronald Paroli, Dave Roll, Brian Hafner, Misha LeBlanc, Ari Messenger, David Grotke, Todd Grossbeck, Wally Estrella, Sue Reinert, John Lico, Stephen Granada, Philip Mueller, Robert Lackey, Dominic Carroll, Jackie McCullough, John Hickman, Carl Presseau, David Neves, Patty Louise, Terry Fitzgerald, Peter Steinmetz, Timothy Fitzpatrick, Michael Izuski, Hank O'Donnell, David Zanoni, David Weil, Matthew Sponsauer, Chad Reno, Spartan Dale, Carolyn Ferguson, Peggy Littlefield, Lauren Allensmith, Eric Burns, Thomas Pearl, Darren McKibben, Richard Stewart, Dave Fletcher, Jack Smith, Luke Parkinson, Ryan Patterson, Sarus Faravar, John Gardner, and Sam Scruggs. And thanks also to all past and anonymous folks for helping make this show happen. Thank you for joining. You can find Pedal Shift at pedalshift.net for more great bicycle touring content. You can hear the Pedal Shift project through Apple Podcasts or your favorite podcast app. Opening music courtesy of Jason Kent off his self-titled album. The track is called America. Check out his band Sunfield's latest release, Mono Mono, wherever cool music is available.